Whether you're a parent navigating myofunctional disorders or simply curious about optimizing your family's overall health, the MyoHacker Podcast is your guide. Hi, I'm Karindy Ong, a speech-language pathologist, myofunctional therapist, and a mom on a mission to bring holistic health to you and your family. Together, we'll explore whole-body connections and integrative solutions. Please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review to help other families discover this important information. Visit myohackerslp.com for free resources and guides. Quick disclaimer. The content shared in this podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests do not necessarily reflect those of the podcast or its affiliates. This podcast does not provide medical, legal, or professional advice. Always consult a professional regarding your circumstances. By listening, you agree that the host and podcast are not responsible for any actions you may take based on the information provided. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to this bonus episode of the MyoHacker Podcast. I daily get questions from families about what can be done for their toddlers or younger kiddos. And I just wanted to talk about that a little bit today. If you can, I would recommend probably watching this episode on YouTube. You can go to YouTube at the MyoHacker Podcast channel. And it might be beneficial because I'm going to demonstrate some things because I'm very big on, I can tell you, but let me show you. So one question that comes up a lot is whether or not my course, MyoMagic at Home, is beneficial for younger kids. I didn't create it to be so, but I have had so many families who, they'll have a little one sit next to an older sibling and watch the videos and do some of the exercises alongside them. And while they're not executing it the same way that, say, the older kiddo is, it actually is beneficial for them. So I'll say the caveat is I didn't design it for being used for kiddos under the age of 4. But when you have that foundational information, I do actually have a pretty fun little workshop that you can take as kind of an addendum to that. And but I do have the prerequisite that you take MyoMagic at Home first because of some of the foundational information that I want you to have. Okay, that aside, questions people have is, my toddler or my younger child, like they have a high vaulted palate, picky eating, they're breathing through their mouth all the time. What are some things that I can do right away? So I want you to know, obviously it'd be amazing if they could go and get an airway evaluation with ENT, a dentist. You can find an SLP or an OT who is trained in myofunctional disorders and tethered oral tissues and feeding, and they can go ahead and take a look at that. The reason, people want to know, like, when do we have this distinction between it being feeding therapy versus myofunctional therapy? And it truly is about how the therapy is presented and the training of the provider. So when we're working with kiddos that are 4 and under, 3 years old and under, it's very important that the provider has a lot of knowledge in regards to developmental feeding patterns and where we are in regards to milestones, what is typical versus atypical, and then as well swallowing. So we want to have that oral phase swallowing and that pharyngeal phase swallowing. We should have awareness of that because of just some of the increased risk, because these kids are learning how to chew. They are learning how to swallow, especially if the patterns aren't as efficient and easily achieved. They might need a little bit more help. And so that's where that comes in. So let's say your kiddo is younger, you're going to be looking for an SLP or an occupational therapist who's going to be trained in these things. There are lots of great resources out. I'll tell you some of them. There's Hallie Bulkin's Feed the Peds. She has a directory that you can go to. Talk Tools, they have directories. There are lots of options out there. So I'm not going to try and tell you who to go see. I just want you to know some of the frameworks that you want to have because that can help. What can you do at home? This is the big question. This is why you're listening. I want you to start playing with your kiddos. That's the key. Play. All right. And we're going to train them and teach them some things, but it's not necessarily going to be you sitting there and telling your child to stick their tongue out. That's not what we're looking for. What we want to start doing is building more of that awareness of boundaries and structures on the face, on the mouth. And a lot of that is going to be licking, sticking their tongue out. And people will ask, like, well, how is that helpful? Because, when we're swallowing and when we're talking, our tongue shouldn't be protruding out of the mouth. Agreed. I don't want that. Okay. But as we're teaching these concepts, the tongue, it's kind of in this dark cave. I love Peachy's Speechy. She talks about this, like, that's why R can be such a difficult sound to learn, is because the tongue is pulled back and it's in this really dark mouth. So when we're teaching kiddos how to use their tongue more appropriately, which what that means is we want their tongue to be resting in their palate. We want the tongue tip up. And if possible, we want them to have that gentle suction to support that craniofacial skeletal growth. So we want to have those things, but showing them that dark cave, they're already not going to be paying attention for the most part, unless you have something really tasty in there, which we'll get to. So what you want is initially we're going to be showing them protrusion, which means sticking the tongue out. I love to have families, especially let's say somebody in the family has a mustache. I'll be like, okay, you're going to paint some yogurt on the mustache and you're going to show this. There's a huge component of modeling. So if you're uncomfortable with some of this silly play, I want you to just pretend you're somebody else. Like, find somebody who's silly, pretend you're me, and just put that character on, because you're going to need to have some of this dynamic play for them to really pay attention to these movements of the tongue. Okay, so we're going to be painting something on that upper lip, and like yogurt, or you can do applesauce. It's a little clear, but something that's kind of sticking up there. And then we're just practicing that play. Yesterday, I was working with a little boy and we're taking cars, and, I'm moving it over my mouth, and it's okay. We're not trying to eat a car, but I have the kiddo. Okay, we're moving that car with the movement of our tongue. So he, this little boy, he's watching me and he's seeing, all right, when she moves her tongue, the car moves a little bit. And is he doing exactly what I'm doing? No, but I want him approximating it, getting close. Okay, so think of it being that way. Anything that you're kind of moving, you just want to correlate that as they're moving this, the tongue is moving too. So that is going to be a great way to start working on some of that tongue tip movement. Don't lose heart if you're like, okay, well, we tried this, and instead of sticking his tongue up, it's just really tucked down, it's low. It's okay. That's going to be a part of it too. It's just bringing it again and again and again and playing with it. Another thing you can do is anytime we can bring some awareness to the cheek. So a lot of kiddos I see, they just haven't been using the buccinators, which are those cheek muscles efficiently. So that would be something like you have a tasty treat and you're pulling it kind of like this. So again, this is a good one to see. What I have is my fingers going in my cheek. I'm pushing against my cheek and I'm pulling it out. I don't recommend you do this as a parent who isn't used to sticking your hand in mouths, because you're going to get chomped. They're very good at that. So what you can do is, let's say you've got a little popsicle stick or something that is soft. I prefer soft things. Chewy tubes are great for this. The side biter, I love it for this. And you're going to take it and you're just going to give a little bit of stimulation on the inside of the cheek, pulling it forward, and then say, don't let me get it out. And that's going to be sort of that sucking. Is this an appropriate thing for everyone? No. But I don't want you to be doing any of these things intensely, okay? This is all just going to be some play. If your kiddo has an aversion, what that means is like they don't want those things by their mouth, don't do this, okay? For that kiddo, what we're going to be doing is a little bit more of get a makeup brush. And you're going to let them first put it on mommy, first put it on daddy, put it on a stuffed animal. And that's just a little bit of stimulation to the face. You can do a cotton ball, things like that. It's even more fun if we actually get into the makeup. They love doing that. And then you're just putting that on the face, and then maybe they're going to put it on their own face. Again, the challenge is to make sure you're not trying to impose on them that you want this, you're going to expect it out of them. We want it to be play. And this just helps with some of that desensitization, bringing that in. It's just so good. Another thing I love to do is have kiddos crawling, and we're sticking our tongue out. And we're guiding our movements. So if we're going forward, we're crawling forward. And I want the crawling because that activates the whole body dynamic awareness. So we're going across the body through crawling specifically. And then you can turn this, they love to do. They'll get on my back and then they guide us, but I'm going to have them, they're moving their tongue. Which way? So as a parent, you're going to be kind of craning your neck. It's okay. All right. You can also use a mirror. You can do these things, but it doesn't have to be perfect. I want you to be just kind of watching them and going, where's your tongue? Where's your tongue? And they're going to show you it's going to go one way and that's how you turn. It's going to go the other way. That's how they turn. Just know, again, with toddlers, they love control. What is a way you can give them control in whatever this play fun activity is that you're doing? Bubbles. That's a great one. Now, make it a big jar of bubbles and separate it out because they're going to get messy. But blowing bubbles, that's a good one. We want to be blowing and getting that control. And you might see a lot of toddlers are going to do sort of this, and it's where they're not actually moving those lips in this controlled way. So that's what you're modeling there. And you can add in a little ooh as you're blowing the bubbles. Ooh. All of that, catching the bubbles is so good. And then let's see if we can pop it on our nose, just bringing, again, back that awareness to midline, especially when we want to have some of that. All of this is so, so good. Another thing that is great, using a vibration toothbrush, okay? This, for one thing, it's better for the teeth, but it's also really good at getting the sensory system desensitized. If your child has a hyperactive gag reflex, I don't want you going in there and trying to like desensitize it. For one thing, please do see a therapist. It can become a bigger problem, even if it doesn't seem like it is one right now. I do want you to see somebody for that, but it's something you can start doing. You're going to warm up the lips, use the backside of that vibration toothbrush, not the bristles. That's too much often. And then we're going to bring it in and make it, again, kind of fun and let them start to feel that. Give it a few days of kind of warming it up if they're used to using just a bristle brush. And, a lot of parents are honest. They're like, we just have given up on brushing teeth. It's so hard. I want you to hear this. You're not alone. A lot of people experience that. Please don't have shame. Please don't use that as a reason to not see someone and get some help, because parenting is hard. Okay. We all need help. We all need help. So I want you to know, like, take that off, take the shame away, and go in and get some help and work on some of that desensitizing with someone that's going to guide you so we don't end up having more anxiety related to brushing our teeth and things of that nature. So all of this is beneficial, and really trying to get more nasal breathing, which if you're like, but my kiddo's so congested, there's no way they can breathe through their nose. This is where I love to recommend you get the saline spray. Start with it in the bath, okay? If they won't take a bath, in the shower. Again, if they have some sensory issues related to water touching their body, I would love it if they were seeing an occupational therapist, because this can be a bit of a sensory integration issue. But what you can do is get just the water on their feet and have something fun in there, okay? Something that is going to draw them into it. And then if you get, especially that like sensory foam, I love using that. It's like a soap. And I cannot attest to whatever the ingredients are in it, but we're just using this for brief moments to train a skill. So what you can do is you can take that foam soap. It usually has a smell to it as well. And you put it on the bathroom, like the shower or the bathtub wall. And then they're going to take that saline spray and they're going to spray it a little bit. And they get to see, oh, that wasn't scary. Because for some kids, that sound of that shh of the aerosolized saline coming out can be scary. And I want them to get used to that. Okay. So you don't necessarily have to do all this rigmarole. If you can, just put the saline spray in their nose, spray, and then get the other side, have them blow it out. That's fantastic. Follow it up with X-Clear or with xylitol, or you can have a combo for that initial saline spray rinse that you did. That's great too. And know that this can help. You might have kids that are going to fight you on it. Like most of the time, they don't love it at the beginning. Again, the control issues, the sensory issues. And if they're constantly congested, they're probably inflamed. It doesn't feel that great initially. After about 2 weeks, kids start to see that they're breathing and feeling better. And it does become less of an issue then. They just inherently will start to feel that. They'll start to feel the change. Know your child. Like right now, if as you're thinking about doing this, you're like, oh my gosh, your stomach just hurts, you feel anxious, I want you to put aside that activity and start doing the nasal spray yourself. I want you to tune in and notice, do you get an anxiety response? Do you feel nervous about it? And work on you without them seeing it yet, because they're going to feel that. Kids are smart. They will sense it right away. So I want you to just tune in and go, whew, am I feeling that? If you are, take a breath and do kind of an adult version of it. You're going to take the saline spray and you're going to kind of go across and see, I didn't die. And then you're going to take the saline spray, put it in one nostril. You didn't die. Do the other. And just, it's okay. You might have a gag response, and there are reasons for that. What I want you to do is breathe out. Exhale as you spray that saline spray in. Just spray it up your nose and you go, make a sound with it, okay? Even better if you can activate your laryngeal system, just the larynx. Get that voice, get this agitation out, okay? Same thing with kiddos. If you're seeing this, have them use that monster voice, and they're going to breathe that saline out as they love to be dragons, okay? It's no longer saline and snot. It's a dragon fire, and they blow it out of their nose, all right? This is the point I'm going to end on, because this is just, it was supposed to be a quickie episode. I now see it's 15 minutes, but what I want you to do is teach your kids how to blow their nose if they don't know how to do it. It's tricky with daycares and, kids, my own children. Okay. So I'm not pointing the finger at anyone. I want you to know, I have seen this with my own children who, I was working, they were in daycare systems. They were seeing, in these places where they didn't have just ready access to tissues. They had to kind of learn how to get around in life without being able to blow their nose. So a lot of these kids, they don't blow their nose out of habit. Some of them don't blow it because they actually don't have that coordination. It feels weird to their body to pressurize one side of the nose and then pressurize the other. So what you can do is take them outside and practice, have them lean forward, and then practice blowing out just air one side. Have them practice blowing out air the other side. If they have an aversion to tissues or paper towels or anything like that, I see that, okay? If your kiddo has that, I see it a lot. All right, I want you to know it's okay. Teach them how to go to a sink and blow their nose in the sink, all right? Then we can gradually work up to those other things. Again, that's where you want an occupational therapist on board with that. And as we get older, there are other things we might incorporate. But I want you to know this is a very important skill. It's really hard for kids to have a chance to blow their noses in public school settings because it's very disruptive, like when they're getting up and moving around. So just have that in mind. So let's build it into our culture at home and start practicing it there. This is where it's going to be beneficial if we can do the saline spray in the morning, do it at night. It's much better to send our kiddos out with clear noses than to have them going into, I'm sort of swapping in the ages here because I started talking about school age, but this is the same thing with daycare. If they're at the daycare, they're not able to necessarily go and blow their noses if they're expected to be in certain centers, or, a Montessori model might have it one way versus another school. All of that to say, the work you do at home really sets them up and helps them with that. Finally, I want you to know the buteco-nasal clearing exercise. You can YouTube it. It's such a good one. I teach my kiddos how to do this. When they're really little, it's very hard to do. So at first, we just are going to coordinate breathing in and then exhaling out. Then see if they'll pinch their nose while you're playing with cars, playing with Legos, playing with Play-Doh, dolls, whatever it is. Then after they pinch their nose for a second, you breathe out of the nose as a dragon again. This just helps with bringing some of that inflammation down. This is something you can do, and it really does. It does help with all the progress. I also will say chewing. Okay. I keep trying to make this shorter, but there's so much to cover here. I want you to know that chewing is such an important part of craniofacial development, and it's actually very hard for us nowadays to chew sufficiently and efficiently. So you can do, when they're this young, know their safety, okay? Like, be aware as a parent of what they've got going on, where the risks are, how old they are exactly. That's where it's great to work with a feeding therapist if you can. But if your child, you're like, they don't have that coordination to chew, they're just mashing things with their tongue, you're already seeing a therapist for these issues, You can use, like I said, the side biter. I love it, especially if they have that gag reflex. Get the mini, not the full length one. You might see that full length one, they respond to it too quickly. It's too much. But the mini, it's not going in very far, and have them chew on the sides. Okay. Then chewy tubes. Those are always great. I would say keep them in your kitchen, keep them in the car, keep them in the bathroom, like get multiple, because it's not like a one and done. You want them chewing throughout the day, and make sure that they're chewing on both sides. Okay. You'll see that there's going to be a dominance. There's one side that's just a little bit better than the other. Make sure they're chewing on both sides of the mouth. So bringing in really hard foods is so good for us to do. So if they can eat off a bone, if they like just gnawing on it, all right, they're not going to be cracking that bone open like a rib or something. Just let them gnaw on it and have that and make it fun. Vegetables are so good. Sugar cane is so good. And I want you to just sort of put out of your mind fear about the sugar in the sugar cane, because it's so beneficial for them to be chewing on it and lateralizing, which means moving the tongue side to side. It's just such a great tool. So I would say get a bunch if you can find it, and make it fun. Really play with the kids. Have that chewing experience be great as far as like memory making. You want to encourage them that it's not a scary sensory input, that it's fun. The Myo Munchie is wonderful. Okay. And you can go to Myo Munchie and look up, it's the Myo Munchie movement on Instagram. I love them. Okay. What they put out is fabulous. They have really great diagrams. They tell you how to use it, all of that. I want you to look into that, because chewing, it's great for lymphatics. It's great for arch formation when you have something like the Myo Munchie, and it just encourages coordination, swallowing, all of that. So please check that out. You can find, well, I'll stop there. Okay. So much to cover. We could keep going, but I wanted to keep it short and not overwhelming, because I want you to just hear this. It's okay if, as you're jumping into Airway, craniofacial development, like you're trying to help your child have their best breathing opportunity through life, and you realize this starts very young. I want you to, take a breath and know the fact that you're just here is huge. Okay. It's huge. And you're already doing things, I'm sure, that are making a difference that you're not even aware of, just because you have this on your radar. So well done. Well done. You're doing it, and I'm here for you. Please let me know what questions you guys have. I know that those questions come up, and I really want us to help our kiddos have the best chances at growing amazing jaws and airways soon. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of the MyoHacker Podcast. Remember, small changes can make big impacts on our overall health and well-being. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. This way, more families will learn about this important information, and we can make a bigger impact. Head on over to myohackerslp.com for in-depth resources and guides. You can also join me on Instagram at MyoHackerSLP for bonus content and demos. And if you have questions or topic suggestions for future episodes, send me a message. I would love to hear from you. Until next time, let's biohack myofunctional health as MyoHackers who change the world through intentional action and connection and breathing. Quick disclaimer reminder, the content shared in this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only.